live in a society that has made all practically any discussion of this illegal. Certainly if I were to end this lecture by handing out doses of psilocybin, I would be gently taken by the elbow and led away forever. The Western mind is particularly phobic of this subject. I mean, we have bent our laws so that people can jump out of airplanes in the pursuit of thrills, so that they can bungee cord off major highway bridges and freeway overpasses. So concerned are we to fulfill society's need for thrills. But this is something else. It provokes all kinds of alarmed reactions. And perhaps you believe unfairly. I think that when you examine the situation, it's possible to understand very clearly why this is such a social issue. Because what these things do, if you look, and now I'm slightly broadening my wrap to include other psychedelics besides psilocybin, but psilocybin is certainly true in all cases. What these things do, if you had to generalize 100,000 psychedelic experiences, the ones where people thought they were God, the ones where people had to be taken to the ER room and have their stomach pumps, all of them, if you generalized, what these substances do is they dissolve boundaries. They dissolve boundaries. If you love it, you'll love it. If you hate it, you'll hate it. But that's what they do. They dissolve boundaries. Now, the reason this provokes a lot of social anxiety is because all societies are about the maintenance of boundaries. It doesn't matter whether you're, a stockbroker in New York, a Zen monk in Kyoto, a Hasid in Jerusalem. Your society is held together by boundaries and definitions, and anything which dissolves those boundaries and introduces relativity into cultural modeling is felt to be threatening, because we like to believe that our reality is somehow sanctioned, that this is how it should be. But in fact, that's just a cultural judgment. All cultures think that their culture represents a sanctioned reality. It doesn't. It just represents the current download of their linguistic enterprise. At the core of the Western anxiety about boundaries is something that we are very proud of, that we believe we invented. We call it the ego. Sometimes we call it the democratic individual. We say no Eastern society could have produced this. We took this from the Greeks, we perfected it through the Romans, we brought it up through the medieval period. John Locke and Thomas Hobbes and all those folks fixed it up for us in the 18th century. Thomas Jefferson ironed out the wrinkles, and modern America is the shining example of what you can do if you empower the ego, the citizen, the individual. We want nothing of tribalism, still less of collectivism, and God forbid, nothing whatsoever to do with communism. See, all these things set us going. But in fact, the ego is appropriate only to a certain point. I mean, yes, we need egos, so that when you take someone to dinner at a reasonable restaurant, you place food in your mouth, not their mouth. This is what the ego is for. It tells you who pays. But in fact, what the ego is the return to consciousness of this psychic structure related to the patterns of dominance. And the way I think of the ego is it's like a cyst or a calcareous growth or a tumor that gets going in the personality. And if not treated, it becomes chronic. And then there is no cure. There can only be, a certain amount of maintenance and medication of it. But it's incurable, except unless we resort to not only non-prescription drugs, but drugs currently illegal. In other words, the psychedelics, through this boundary dissolving function, dissolve that boundary as well. And so they promote a larger sense of the world than the values of capitalism, competitiveness, object fetishism, property acquisition, and the bottom line, empower.